My name is Alex. And if you're reading this, well, maybe you've seen the warnings. Maybe you've heard whispers online. Fragmented stories, passed around like digital ghosts. Maybe you even saw the title, the one that sounds like a cheap campfire story. If you are stuck in a blizzard and find this abandoned cabin, stay away, don't go in. I wish I'd seen it. I wish someone had screamed it in my face before I turned off that highway. But you never think it's going to be you, do you? You never think you'll be the idiot in the story. It wasn't supposed to be a long drive. Just heading back home after visiting my folks upstate. Standard trip. Maybe 5 hours on the road. The weather forecast had mentioned possible flurries, nothing serious. Typical late autumn ambiguity. I'd made this drive dozens of times. I wasn't worried. Maybe that was the first mistake, complacency. I had this old sedan. Reliable enough usually. But the heater had been acting up, and the tires were probably due for a change. Minor things you put off, you know? Things that seem insignificant until they suddenly aren't. The snow started gently, picturesque almost. Fat flakes drifting down, dusting the pines lining the road. Then, within maybe 15 minutes, it turned vicious. It wasn't flurries, it was a wall. A blinding, swirling vortex of white that swallowed the road, the trees, everything. Visibility dropped to near zero. The wind began to howl, not just whistle, but scream, rocking the car on its suspension. It was sudden, brutal, like flipping a switch from Yachten Drive to Arctic survival horror. Panic, cold and sharp, started pricking at the base of my skull. My wipers strained, uselessly smearing the thick, wet snow across the windshield. The tires, those tires I should have replaced, started to lose their grip on the unseen pavement below. I slowed to a crawl, knuckles white on the steering wheel, peering into the maelstrom. The fuel gauge, which I'd optimistically thought was sufficient, was dipping towards I, far faster than it should have. The faulty heater chose this exact moment to give up entirely, breathing out only frigid air. Freezing. Aligned. The car fishtailed. A sickening slide towards the shoulder and stalled. Just like that. Dead silence inside. Save for my own ragged breathing and the muffled roar of the blizzard outside. This was it. This was how people ended up as grim statistics on the morning news. Hypothermia in a stranded car. My initial panic began to solidify into a colder, heavier dread. I tried my phone, no signal, of course. Utterly, terrifyingly isolated. How far had I even gone since the last exit? Dozens of miles. The snow was already piling up against the doors. Staying here was a death sentence. I squinted through the passenger window, wiping away the condensation with my glove. And then I saw it. For just a second. The wind must have shifted the curtain of snow, offering a fleeting glimpse. A shape. Dark, angular, stark against the overwhelming white. A structure. A cabin. Relief hit me first, a dizzying wave. Shelter. Warmth. Safety. But it was immediately followed by a profound sense of unease. It looked wrong. Even from a distance through the swirling snow, it radiated neglect. It stood alone, impossibly isolated. No driveway, no path visible. Why? just squatting there in the deep woods well off the road, like something that had grown out of the frozen earth, rather than been built upon it. Its roof sagged, and one side seemed to lean precariously. Dark patches that might have been missing shingles or boarded up windows marred its silhouette. No smoke from a chimney. No lights, nothing to suggest life. Just an abandoned, decaying shack. Why was it even here? Who would build so far from anything? The sensible part of my brain. The part not currently screaming about freezing to death. Whispered warnings. Abandoned places deep in the woods are staples of horror stories for a reason. There was a primal wrongness to it. But the cold was biting deeper now, seeping through my coat, numbing my fingers even inside my gloves. The car was rapidly becoming an icebox. Stay here and die for sure. Go there and maybe die. But maybe not. Desperation is a powerful motivator. Discover. It makes you ignore the alarm bells clanging in your head. It makes you the idiot who walks towards the creepy cabin. I pushed the car door open against the accumulating drift, the wind tearing at me instantly. The trek was brutal. The snow was deeper than it looked. Sometimes up to my thighs, each step an exhausting effort. The wind drove ice crystals into my face like needles. By the time I reached the cabin's porch, a small, warped platform half buried in snow, I was gasping, shivering uncontrollably. The door looked ancient. Warped wood stained dark by decades of weather. I expected it to be locked, maybe swollen shut. But the knob turned easily in my numb hand, and the door creaked open with barely a push. Either unlocked or broken. Neither felt reassuring. The air that hit me from inside wasn't warm, not even slightly. It was colder, somehow, than the air outside, a dead, still, biting cold that carried the scent of decay, damp wood, stale air, and something else, like something faintly metallic, like old blood, and underneath it all, a strange, cloying sweetness that turned my stomach. The silence inside was absolute. A heavy, pressing void that felt louder than the storm I'd just escaped. It was the silence of a place that hadn't heard a human voice in a very, very long time. My eyes adjusted slowly to the gloom. One main room, large and sparsely furnished. A stone fireplace gaped on one wall, black with soot. A rickety table and two chairs stood near the center, coated in a thick layer of dust. Peeling wallpaper revealed dark, water-stained wood beneath. In one corner, a pile of what looked like rags might have once been bedding. Disturbingly, there were signs of recent, or at least abrupt, departure. A half-burned candle on the mantelpiece, a tin cup lying on its side on the floor, an open book face down on the table, its pages stiff with damp. It felt less abandoned, more interrupted. Like whoever was here last left mid-thought, mid-action. I tried to rationalize it. Squatters, maybe. Forced out by the weather years ago. Or a hunter's cabin long forgotten. Anything but the cold knot of fear tightening in my gut. This place felt wrong. It felt watchful. But where else could I go? The blizzard raged outside, a white hell. I managed to find a few damp logs near the fireplace. Maybe enough for a small, smoky fire later if I could even get it started. I checked the windows, grimy, some cracked. one crudely boarded up from the inside. I pushed the main door shut, the latch clicking weakly. Trapped. The feeling was palpable. As the weak daylight outside began to fade into a deeper, storm-induced twilight, the cabin seemed to shrink around me. The isolation pressed in, heavy and suffocating. My own breathing sounded unnaturally loud in the stillness. And then, the noises started. At first, I dismissed them. The wind, finding its way through countless cracks, moaned like a distant voice, almost like whispers just at the edge of hearing. The old wood of the cabin groaned and popped. As the temperature fluctuated, settling sounds, normal settling sounds. But my nerves were frayed raw. Every creak sounded like a footstep upstairs. Every sigh of the wind through the broken chimney sounded like breath. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept glancing towards the darker corners, towards the closed doors leading off the main room, one presumably to a bedroom, the other, smaller and lower, likely to a cellar. I told myself it was just cabin fever setting in early, the product of fear and isolation. My mind playing tricks. Discovered why. But the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave. It felt like unseen eyes were tracking my every movement from the shadows. I jumped when a gust of wind rattled the boarded-up window, swearing under my breath. Get a grip, Alex, I told myself. It's just an old house and a bad storm. I tried to huddle near the fireplace, pulling my knees to my chest for warmth. Even without a fire, the cold was relentless. I must have drifted off, exhaustion finally claiming me despite the fear. But sleep offered no escape. It was filled with fragmented nightmares, swirling snow, dark shapes half seen. The feeling of being lost and hunted. I woke with a start, unsure what had pulled me from the uneasy sleep. The cabin was pitch black now. The storm outside a constant, dull roar. My teeth were chattering violently. How long had I been out? An hour. More. Then I heard it again. Not the wind. Not the house settling. Soft, heavy, definite. From below, I froze, every muscle locked. Listening. Silence stretched thick and heavy. Maybe I imagined it. A log shifting. My own heart pounding. T-ump. Louder this time. Directly beneath my feet. Coming from the cellar. Something was down there, and it knew I was here. The rationalizations crumbled into dust. This wasn't just an abandoned cabin. It was something else. Something terrible. And I had walked right into it. Ignoring the warnings my own fear had screamed at me. The unspoken warning suddenly felt deafeningly loud in the terrifying silence. Stay away. Don T. Go in. Too late. I was already inside. And the thing in the cellar was awake. My blood turned to ice water. Every horror movie cliché, every campfire story warning, every shred of common sense I'd ignored screamed at me now. TAMP, again. Slower this time, more deliberate. Like something heavy being dragged across a dirt floor. My breath hitched in my throat, a painful knot. I couldn't move, couldn't think past the sheer, paralyzing terror. The cold in the room seemed to intensify, sinking into my bones, a physical manifestation of the dread gripping me. Silence followed. A thick, waiting silence that was somehow worse than the noise. Had it stopped? Was it listening for me? My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. The wind howled outside, a mocking counterpoint to the dead stillness within. I strained my ears, listening for any sound, a creak, a breath, another thump. Nothing. Just the groan of old wood and the relentless blizzard. Maybe it was just the house. Old pipes. Settling foundations stressed by the sudden cold. My mind desperately grasped for logical explanations, trying to push back the tide of primal fear. But the sound had been too distinct, too rhythmic, too intentional. It wasn't the house. It was something in the house. Down there, in the cellar. I stayed frozen for what felt like an eternity. Huddled by the cold hearth. Eyes darting towards the low, dark cellar door near the back wall. It looked ancient, made of thick, rough-hewn planks, bound with rusted iron hinges. A simple wooden latch held it closed, no padlock, no deadbolt. Just a flimsy piece of wood separating me from whatever was down there. The silence stretched on. Minutes crawled by. The only sounds were my own chattering teeth and the storm's fury. The urge to flee, to burst out into the blizzard and take my chances with the elements, was overwhelming. But the snow was deep, the wind lethal. Leaving the cabin now would be suicide, just as surely as staying in the car would have been. I was trapped. Trapped between the deadly storm outside and the unknown horror lurking below. Slowly, painfully, I forced myself to move. My limbs felt stiff, heavy, unwilling. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to curl into a ball and wait for morning, for rescue, for anything. But the silence from the cellar was unnerving. Was it waiting? Was it coming? The uncertainty was a torture of its own. I needed to know. Or maybe I just needed to do something, anything, to fight the paralysis of fear. I crept towards the cellar door, each footstep on the dusty floorboards, sounding like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. The air grew colder as I approached, the faint metallic, sickly sweet smell stronger here. I pressed my ear against the rough wood, holding my breath. Silence. Absolute, profound silence. Had I imagined it all? Was the isolation, the fear, finally making me lose my mind? Hallucinations brought on by stress and cold. Then, a faint scrallip. From the other side of the door. Low, dry, like fingernails dragging across stone. I recoiled as if burned, stumbling back, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. My fragile hope shattered. The terror returned, sharp and suffocating. I backed away from the cellar door, heart pounding, eyes wide in the gloom. I couldn't face it. Not yet. My gaze fell on the other closed door, the one I assumed led to a bedroom. Maybe there was something in there. A weapon. An escape route. A window that wasn't boarded up. Anything was better than confronting the cellar. With trembling hands, I reached for the knob on the bedroom door. It turned easily, like the front door had. It swung inward with a low groan. The same dead, cold air washed over me, thick with the smell of dust and mildew. But without the underlying metallic sweetness of the main room. The bedroom was small, even darker than the main room. Moonlight, filtered through the storm clouds and a grimy window pane, cast long, distorted shadows. A simple wooden bed frame stood against one wall, stripped bare. A small, dilapidated dresser leaned against another. Dust lay thick on every surface, disturbed only by looked like small animal tracks, mice, probably. But amidst the decay, there were more signs of that same abrupt interruption I'd sensed earlier. A single, worn boot lay on its side near the bed. On the dresser, a small, tarnished silver locket lay open, empty. And on the wall above the bed, someone had scrawled something. Not paint, not ink. It looked dark, smeared like dried blood. My stomach churned. The scrawl was crude, almost childlike, but the message was chillingly Klern ITCs. Below the words was a drawing. A stick figure, presumably human, standing small and terrified. Looming over it was a larger shape, tall and distorted, with too many limbs and eyes that seemed to glow, even in the crude depiction. It looked disturbingly like some of the monstrous figures from my nightmares. My breath caught. It seized. The feeling of being watched intensified, becoming a physical pressure against my skin. I spun around, convinced something was standing right behind me in the shadows of the small room. Nothing. Just dust motes dancing in the faint light. But the feeling lingered, heavy and malevolent. This wasn't just a place, it was a trap, and whatever haunted it was aware of my presence. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked loudly in the main room. I froze, listening. Another creak, closer this time. Not the random settling of old wood. This sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the main room towards the bedroom door. Panic seized me. I wasn't alone in the cabin. Not even counting whatever was in the cellar. Was it the previous occupant? Had they come back? Or was it something else? Something drawn by the storm, or by me? My mind raced, conjuring images of madmen, escaped prisoners, vengeful spirits. The possibilities were endless, and all of them terrifying. I backed further into the bedroom, heart hammering, searching frantically for something, anything, to use as a weapon. My hand closed around the loose leg of the broken dresser, flimsy, rotten wood, but better than nothing. I flattened myself against the wall beside the doorframe, trying to control my ragged breathing, listening to the footsteps pause just outside the open bedroom door. Silence. The oppressive, waiting silence returned, stretching my nerves to the breaking point. I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. The cold air burned in my lungs. Then, a whisper, dry and sibilant, slithered through the doorway, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't quite human, filled with a rustling, insect-like quality. Cold. It was a statement, a recognition. It knew I was cold. It knew I was afraid. The whisper was followed by a soft, wet chuckle that scraped against my sanity. I squeezed the dresser leg, knuckles white, bracing myself. The shadow filling the doorway shifted, elongated, seemed to detach itself from the surrounding darkness. I couldn't see clearly, not in the oppressive gloom, but the silhouette was wrong. Too tall, too thin, limbs bent at unnatural angles. And the eyes, even in the near total darkness, I could sense them. 2 points of faint, malevolent red light, fixing on me. It saw me, just like the scrawl on the wall warned. The thing in the doorway took a shuffling step forward, and the cellar door behind it in the main room suddenly banged open with a deafening crash. Time fractured. The crash of the cellar door echoed the frantic hammering in my chest. My vision tunneled, focusing solely on the impossibly tall figure silhouetted against the dim light from the main room. Its red eyes burning holes in the darkness. The whisper, a cold, still hung in the air, a tangible chill that had nothing to do with the blizzard outside. The air thickened, heavy with the stench of damp earth, decay, and that sickeningly sweet, metallic tang. From the now open cellar doorway drifted a sound that wasn't a thump or a scrape, but a low, guttural moan, a sound of profound hunger and ancient suffering. It resonated deep in my bones, a primal vibration of wrongness. The figure in the bedroom doorway didn't turn. It didn't react to the sound from the cellar. It just took another shuffling step towards me, its movements jerky, unnatural like a marionette with tangled strings. My paralysis finally broke, shattered by pure, unadulterated terror. Adrenaline surged, hot and sharp despite the numbing cold. With a choked cry, I swing the rotten dresser leg like a club. It connected with something. I felt a jarring impact. Heard a dry crack, but the figure barely flinched. It just tilted its head, the red eyes seeming to narrow, and let out another wet, rasping chuckle. Panic fueled my limbs. I scrambled backwards, deeper into the small bedroom, tripping over the discarded boot. My eyes darted around, searching for another way out. Anything. The window grimy, yes, but maybe not boarded. I lunged towards it, fumbling with the latch, my frozen fingers clumsy and unresponsive. Behind me, the figure advanced, its shadow stretching impossibly long, engulfing the room. I could hear its ragged breathing now, a dry, rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. And beneath that, the moaning from the cellar grew louder, closer, echoing up into the main room. The window latch wouldn't budge, frozen painted over. Despair clawed at me. Trapped. Utterly, hopelessly trapped. The figure was almost upon me, its chilling presence radiating a cold far deeper than the storm. I could almost make out features in the gloom now, a gaunt, skeletal face. Skin stretched tight like old parchment, a lipless mouth pulled into a horrifying, serrated grin. From the main room, a new sound, a heavy, dragging footstep on the stairs leading up from the cellar. Thump, drag, thump, drag. Whatever was down there was coming up. The figure in front of me paused, its head cocked as if listening. Was it waiting for its companion? Was this a coordinated hunt? In that split second of hesitation, instinct took over. Not fight, but flight. It was insane, suicidal maybe, but staying here was certain death. I spun away from the window, away from the figure, and bolted back towards the bedroom doorway. The figure reacted with surprising speed. A long, unnaturally thin arm lashing out. I felt icy claws rake across my shoulder, tearing through my coat, but I didn't stop. I burst back into the main room. The air here was thick with dust and the overpowering stench from the cellar. My eyes instinctively shot to the cellar entrance. Something was emerging. A shape, low and hunched, obscured by the darkness below, but the guttural moaning intensified, vibrating through the floorboards. I didn't wait to see more. The front door was my only hope. It felt miles away. I sprinted across the room, slipping on the dusty floor, my lungs burning, my heart threatening to explode. Why? Behind me, I heard a shriek, high-pitched and inhuman, from the bedroom figure, followed by the heavy, dragging footsteps quickening their pace from the cellar stairs. My numb fingers fumbled with the weak wooden latch on the front door. It felt impossibly stiff. Please, please open. The sounds were closer now, the rustling breath, the dragging steps, the hungry moans converging behind me. The feeling of being watched intensified into a certainty of being hunted. The latch gave. The ancient door groaned open, protesting against the snowdrift outside. A blast of wind and blinding snow hit me, a brutal shock after the dead air of the cabin. For a terrifying second, I hesitated. The blizzard was a killer in its own right. Freezing. Lost. Alone. But the sounds behind me, the presence filling the cabin, was worse. It was ancient evil. A hunger that defied nature. It was the reason this place felt so fundamentally wrong. I plunged out into the white hell, slamming the door shut behind me, not daring to look back. The wind tore at me, the snow blinded me instantly. I stumbled forward, falling into the deep drifts, scrambling up again, driven by sheer terror. Was anything following? I couldn't tell. The roar of the storm swallowed every other sound. I don't know how long I ran, or how far I got. I just pushed through the snow, fueled by adrenaline and the horrifying images. Burned into my mind the red eyes, the grinning skull, the thing crawling from the cellar. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking shape. Every howl of the wind sounded like that sibilant whisper. The isolation was absolute, terrifying, but it felt safer than the suffocating presence in that cabin. Maybe I froze out there. Maybe I collapsed. Lost and disoriented, just another victim of the storm. Maybe I'm still wandering, trapped between worlds like the legends say. Or maybe, just maybe, I somehow made it. But I remember the warning. The one I didn't see, the one I didn't heed. The one that echoes in my mind even now, louder than the blizzard's roaring. If you are stuck in a blizzard and find this abandoned cabin, stay away. Don T. Joe in. Believe it. For God's sake, believe it. Don't be the idiot in the story. Don't go in.